Ask anyone over 40 to describe a summer night from their childhood. They will mention the fireflies. Not the mosquitoes, not the heat, the fireflies. The way the fields pulsed with cold green light after dark. The way a jar with holes punched in the lid could hold a lantern for an hour before you let them go. The way the tree line along the creek seemed to breathe with light on August evenings. It is one of the most consistent childhood memories across every American generation that grew up before the turn of the millennium. Now ask them when they last saw that. The silence that follows that question is the subject of this video. 1 in 3 firefly species in North America may be at risk of extinction. A 2024 study analyzing 24,000 citizen science surveys documented concerning population drops across the continent. The first firefly species, the Bethany Beach firefly, was proposed for Endangered Species Act protection in 2024. 14% of North American firefly species may be threatened with extinction right now. And the reason most people have not noticed is the same reason the problem is so hard to solve. Fireflies do not disappear dramatically. They do not wash up on beaches. They do not block roads. They do not appear in headlines. They simply become fewer, year by year, field by field, quietly, until one summer you realize the tree line is dark, and you try to remember when that happened, and you cannot. That is what ecological loss looks like when it is not catastrophic enough to make the news. This is that story. A firefly is not a fly. It is a beetle family, Lampyridae, and there are approximately 2,000 species of them worldwide, around 170 in North America alone. Each species has its own flash pattern, its own timing, its own dialect of light. The male flies and flashes. The female, typically perched in vegetation below, responds with her own flash at precisely the species-specific interval. This is how they find each other in the dark. This is how fireflies have been finding each other for approximately 100 million years. The light itself is one of the most efficient biological processes ever documented. A firefly's bioluminescence converts nearly 100% of its energy into light. For comparison, an incandescent light bulb converts roughly 10% of its energy into light, and the rest into heat. Scientists studying firefly bioluminescence contributed to the development of medical imaging technology, cancer research tools, and environmental contaminant detection methods. The chemical reaction that produces the light, involving an enzyme called luciferin and a compound called luciferin, has been used in research laboratories across the world for decades. The firefly is not merely a beautiful insect. It is a biochemical marvel that has contributed to human medicine, funded entire research programs, and lit up summer nights for 100 million years. And it is disappearing, quietly, faster than most people know. There are 4 drivers of firefly decline, and what makes them collectively devastating is that they compound each other. The first is habitat loss. Firefly larvae spend 1 to 2 years underground or in leaf litter. The exact environments that housing developments, commercial construction, and lawn management eliminate most thoroughly. Virginia Tech entomologist Eric Day is direct about this. Housing and commercial development are the biggest threats to firefly habitat loss. This is why we're seeing less and less each year. A 2024 study from Penn State University confirmed that urban development plays a significant role in firefly population decline. A lawn where a field used to be supports essentially 0 firefly larvae. A parking lot where a wetland used to be supports fewer still. The second is pesticides. Firefly larvae are predators. They hunt small snails, slugs, worms, and other soft-bodied invertebrates in the soil. They are exposed to pesticides through direct application, through runoff, and through consuming prey that has already been contaminated. Neonicotinoid pesticides, the most widely used class of insecticides in the world, are broad-spectrum chemicals that do not distinguish between the pest species they target and the firefly larvae developing in the same soil. Pesticides are believed to be a major cause of firefly declines, and while research on specific pesticide risks to fireflies is limited, several studies suggest that commonly used insecticides are a threat. The firefly larvae are underground for most of their lives, largely invisible, impossible to observe declining in real time, and fully exposed to every chemical decision made on the land above them. The third is light pollution. This is the one that most people find counterintuitive until they understand the mechanism. Fireflies use light to communicate. Specifically, they use the contrast between their flash and the darkness around them. A male Photinus spiralis, the most common North American species, produces a flash every 5.5 seconds, exactly, and waits exactly 2 seconds for a female response. He is not listening for that response, he is watching for it. Against a dark field, a single female flash is visible from meters away. Against a suburban sky glowing with streetlights, security lights, porch lights, and the ambient light of nearby development, the signal is lost in the noise. The male cannot find the female. The female cannot distinguish the male's flash from the background light. Fireflies light up to communicate both what species they are and how to find mates. If people's outdoor lighting interferes with fireflies being able to see each other's glow, then breeding will be negatively affected. No breeding means no larvae. No larvae means no adults next summer. The field goes dark permanently, not because anyone killed the fireflies, but because the darkness they needed to reproduce was replaced with the soft, permanent glow of a subdivision that did not exist 30 years ago. The fourth is climate change. Subtle changes in climate patterns, especially related to temperature, are significantly impacting firefly breeding cycles and habitat quality. Firefly emergence timing is temperature dependent. The synchronization between male and female flash patterns, between adult emergence and mating season, between larval development and prey availability, all of it is tuned to temperature rhythms that are shifting. Drought reduces the moist habitats that larvae need. Sea level rise is already implicated in the decline of coastal species like the Bethany Beach firefly. What climate change does to fireflies is not one thing. It is an accumulation of small timing disruptions across a life cycle, so precisely calibrated to environmental cues that even subtle shifts create mismatches the species cannot compensate for. 4 drivers, all operating simultaneously, all pointing in the same direction. Here's what makes the firefly decline particularly difficult to reverse. Unlike a large mammal whose population crash appears in census data within a season, firefly decline is measured across decades. The 2024 study that documented population drops relied on 24,000 citizen science surveys, ordinary people recording firefly observations over years. The dataset is extraordinary and the findings are alarming, but they are also a record of something that was already happening long before anyone started counting. The anecdotal evidence precedes the scientific data by generations. People have been saying the fireflies are not what they were since at least the 1980s. In areas that were once, by eyewitness accounts, dense with firefly displays on summer evenings. That density is now a memory that the scientific surveys are only now beginning to quantify and confirm. 1 in 3 species is potentially at risk of extinction. That figure comes from the most comprehensive firefly threat assessment attempted in North America. It covers 170 species, with population data of varying quality and completeness, and it produces a number that is alarming precisely because of how uncertain it is. 1 in 3 potentially at risk means the actual number could be lower or could be higher. The uncertainty is itself the problem. We do not have good enough data on most firefly species to know exactly how many are declining, by how much or how fast. What we know is the direction. The direction is down. The Bethany Beach firefly, Photurus bethaniensis, exists in a stretch of coastal wetland habitat in Delaware, so specific and so threatened by residential development that its entire known range is measured in acres, not square miles. In 2024, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service was petitioned to list it under the Endangered Species Act. That petition is a measure of how far the situation has gone. The ESA is a last resort mechanism, triggered when a species has already declined to the point where formal legal protection is the only remaining option. The synchronous fireflies of the Great Smoky Mountains, Potinos carolinos, produce one of the most extraordinary natural spectacles in North America. For 2 weeks, each June, thousands of fireflies in the Smoky Mountains flash in perfect synchrony, a behavior so remarkable that the national park has managed visitor access to it for years, specifically because the human traffic drawn to the display was itself damaging the habitat that produced it. Over-tourism, people coming to see the fireflies, became a threat to the fireflies. The irony is complete and uncomfortable. These are the visible cases, the famous ones, the ones with names and petitions and managed viewing platforms. Most firefly species decline without any of that. They simply become fewer in fields and forests and creek margins that nobody is counting, until a generation of children grows up and cannot remember what their parents described. The fixes are not complicated. They're just distributed across millions of individual decisions that no single policy can mandate. Turn off outdoor lights between 10 p.m. and dawn during firefly season, late May through July in most of North America. Or switch to warm amber LED lighting rather than cool white, which is more disruptive to firefly flash communication. Let part of your lawn grow into the unmowed meadow that firefly larvae need. Stop using broad-spectrum pesticides on lawns that adjoin natural areas. Leave leaf litter in place. It is firefly larval habitat. None of these actions requires legislation. None requires a government program. None requires scientific expertise. Each one, scaled across millions of suburban properties, represents a meaningful reversal of one of the 4 drivers that are pushing firefly populations downward. The Firefly Atlas, a citizen science project that tracks firefly populations across North America, needs observations, not from scientists, from anyone who goes outside in summer and looks. In 2024, volunteers submitted 385 incidental observations and 217 full surveys. Those numbers need to be 10 times larger to produce the population data that conservation decisions require. You can contribute to that data by going outside with a notepad. There is a version of this story that is purely about biology and policy, about habitat protection and pesticide regulation and light ordinances and climate targets. That version is real and it matters. And there is another version that is about something harder to quantify. Darren McNeil, principal investigator of the 2024 Firefly study, put it this way in a press release: the research exists because fireflies matter ecologically and because they provide important childhood wonder and love in the natural world. That phrase, childhood wonder and love, appears in a scientific press release. A scientist working on firefly population decline felt it was important enough to say, because the loss of fireflies is not only a loss of a species, or a set of species, or an ecosystem indicator. It is the loss of a specific experience of the natural world that connects generations to each other and to the living systems that surround them. The children who grow up without fireflies will not mourn them. You cannot mourn what you have never seen. They will simply grow up with darker summer nights, and they will not know what they are missing. And when someone their grandparents' age tries to describe it, the field pulsing with cold green light, the jar with holes punched in the lid, the tree line along the creek breathing with August light, it will sound like a description of a world that is gone. That world is not gone yet, but it is going, quietly, measurably, faster than most people know. The summer nights you remember are still possible. For some people in some places, they are still happening. But the window in which the decisions that preserve them can be made is not open forever. Turn off the porch light. Let the lawn grow. Go outside after dark in June and count what you see. If this story made you think about a summer night you remember, or one your children may never have shared, because the firefly does not make headlines when it disappears. It just stops appearing, and by the time the absence is undeniable, the decisions that could have mattered have already been made. Subscribe, because the true stories are always the ones happening quietly, just beyond what we are paying attention to.